Good morning, everyone. Today's screencast is for Wednesday, May 13th. And on our schedule here, we're going to be covering pages 7 and 8 in our packets. This is on the explorer, Ibn Battuta. So there's actually two tasks. One is to read through some of the information on pages 7. And there's a video clip that is a short summary clip we will watch together. But the other task I have on the schedule that I want you to do on your own is to watch select scenes from this very long, about 45-minute documentary called The Man Who Walked Across the World. If you want to watch the whole thing and you have time and you're interested in it, great, by all means go ahead. But on page 7, there will be actual scene selection times that I want you to watch. Only maybe like 5 or 6 minutes in total. So we're going to be covering these pages on Ibn Battuta today. And I'm giving you tomorrow to go over the questions and to complete the tasks that are on those pages. And the next screencast I will post, the next assignment we have, is on Friday. So make sure that you're checking back on Friday. Our packet will be done by then, and we will be working on a little bit of Enduring Issues document practice. So not the terms and the boxes on the worksheets that we would have in the past for our wall, but on a separate document practice that we have done a couple other times to go through some documents that you would have to analyze in order to complete a Regents essay for an Enduring Issues task. Also on Friday, there will be a interim report posted to Aspen. The administration of the high school is asking teachers to have their interim comments posted by today. Mine are in, all set. And you guys, I believe, have access to that, as well as your parents, starting on Friday. So make sure that you're checking your interim reports for all your classes, not only mine, on Friday, to get a little bit of feedback and some comments on your status and how you're doing so far this quarter in Global 9. All right, so let's jump over to our packet and begin. All right, so our second highlighted key person of this unit is Explorer Ibn Battuta. And on the top, we have a basic question to answer and to consider as we go through today's tasks. Who was Ibn Battuta? Also, where was he from? And what impact did his travels have on the Islamic world? So to give you an overview, here on page 7, we're going to watch the introductory video, the PBS World Explorers. To get a little intro to Ibn Battuta, we're going to read the text information that tells us a little bit about where he's from and what he did on his travels. We will answer some of these questions. And then on the second page, page 8, I will brief you on what I want you to do on this page, but I'm not going to go over all of these questions with you. Page 8 is essentially just some map skill questions to practice analyzing the key and legend markings on this map of where Ibn Battuta traveled. A little bit of geography knowledge and practice here. And also there's one question that I'll explain to you, but I want you to do on your own, question 5. This is a little more of a thinking question beyond just what you see in the map. Okay, Ibn Battuta, who was this guy? So I'm going to read the text with us first to get a little introduction to him, and then we'll watch the short PBS video on him. So follow along with me right up here. Ibn Battuta, who lived 1304 to 1369, was a scholar of Islamic law and a traveler who left his home of Tangier in modern-day Morocco on a pilgrimage, or as we call in the Islamic religion, on a Hajj to Mecca, and continued traveling for almost 30 years. Battuta traveled mostly in lands where Islam was the predominant religion and where people spoke Arabic because of the spread of the religion. So I had mentioned earlier in this unit that we're going to be seeing the impact of the religion of Islam quite a lot. We had a whole unit on Islam and the Middle Eastern civilizations, but that religion and its culture and civilization are continuing to spread. We know that it eventually goes all the way into Asia and India, as well as we're seeing here in this unit, it's making its way into North Africa. By the 1300s, Muslims could be found throughout North Africa, the Middle East, Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and even in China. Islam spread to the far-flung areas of Asia by merchants from the Middle East who traded for spices and other goods in Asia and spread their religion through cultural diffusion. Battuta was able to travel throughout the Muslim world because of his experience as a traveler and knowledge of Islamic law were sought after by followers of the religion who had not been able to study in centers of Islamic scholarship like Baghdad. So that's a little bit of a long sentence. I just want to take a second to explain that. So remember when we were doing our Islamic unit that there was universities, there was these centers of learning in cities like Baghdad in the Middle East. And Islamic scholars from all over the Muslim world would come to these centers of learning to study and debate. A lot of times it was inventions in science and philosophy, and other times they would also be studying Islamic law. So if you were not fortunate enough of a Muslim, as a follower of Islam, to be able to travel and spend the tuition and the money to go to these universities, you were still curious to learn more about your religion and to understand what was in the Quran and know more about how you needed to act. So a lot of these Muslim nations would host and welcome people that were traveling from other places, especially centers of learning like Baghdad or Timbuktu, as we saw with Mansa Musa. Timbuktu became a center of Islamic learning as well. So Ibn Battuta was able to travel throughout many Muslim world nations because of his knowledge of Islamic law. And as we're going to see a little bit later, he also was he spoke Arabic, which was the language that most Muslims used throughout the Muslim nations. So that knowledge is going to be able to help him travel and be accepted by a lot of these places. Last paragraph. When he returned home to Tangier, Ibn Battuta was instructed by the Sultan of Morocco to record his stories. 20 years after they took place, he dictated his tales to a writer named Ibn Jazay, who wrote them into a travel guide called the Rila. So essentially this travel guide called the Rila is basically like his journal, except he's not writing it the day that those things are happening, like you would typically think of a diary or a journal being written. I don't know why he didn't write these things down as he was experiencing them. Obviously back then, he doesn't have a phone with him or a camera to kind of document things easily and quickly as he goes along. But for whatever the case is, he doesn't keep a journal while he's on his travels. The Sultan, the Muslim leader of the Moroccan nation, asks him to record his stories when he gets back. So after they took place, many years after they took place, is when he's writing these things down. And because of that, as we read here, some scholars believe that some of Ibn Battuta's accounts were made up or based on what he had heard from other travelers, and that Ibn Jazay, the scribe that was writing it down, filled in some of the gaps in Ibn Battuta's recollections with descriptions from the writings of other travelers. So if we were to read a excerpt from the Rila, we would consider it, this would kind of be a tough one if we were to consider it a primary or a secondary source. I mean, it's from the general time period of when Ibn Battuta was alive, but it is recording events and accounts of something that happened not by an eyewitness account per se, because Ibn Jazay is writing it. Ibn Battuta is the one who experienced it. And he's writing it after those things actually happened, but it's still him who experienced it. So this would be kind of falling into a gray area. I'll get back to you on this to see where this might categorize. This is an interesting historical document that we're going to take a look at. All right, so let's watch this video to get a little bit of a visual introduction and some more information on Ibn Battuta's life.
The Moroccan traveler Ibn Battuta is known as the greatest Muslim explorer in history. His extraordinary travels took him as far from home as India and China, and his narrative account of his 30-year journey is unique in Islamic and medieval history. Ibn Battuta was born in 1301 in the town of Tangier in present-day Morocco on the coast of northwest Africa. His family was of Berber descent, a nomadic desert people of camels and horses, tents and trade. But his father settled his family in Tangier and became a scholar of Islam, raising his son to be the same. Islamic faith had its roots in Mecca and spread over several hundred years to become a religious empire stretching over 3 continents. Muslims, followers of Islam, emphasized prayer, charity, and the study of Islamic law as part of their daily devotion to God, or Allah. Ibn Battuta had learned as much as he could about Islam from the scholars in Tangier. He longed to know more. I left Tangier with the intention of going on pilgrimage to Mecca. I was alone, without companions, not in a caravan. I was stirred by a powerful urge to reach my goal, Mecca. I left my friends and my home, just as a bird leaves its parental nest. I was then only 22.
So I want to stop there just for a second, because we have 2 key people in this unit, Mansa Musa, and here we have Ibn Battuta. And they are both Muslim, they are both traveling, and we see a lot of similarities in that way. Where they're traveling is similar, why they're traveling is similar, but who they are and what kind of impact their travels have are a little bit different. So one thing that's very similar is that they are both traveling for the Islamic purpose of going on the pilgrimage to Mecca, completing the pillar of Islam called the Hajj. Now, Ibn Battuta is a, scholarly traveler. He's a, Islamic teacher, so to speak, and he's traveling on the Hajj to complete that pillar of Islam and to learn more about the religion. Mansa Musa, being a king, he's completing the Hajj for the same reason, but he's doing so in more of a stately, diplomatic way, as we saw with him spreading, wealth in the cities and having mosques and schools built as he went along. And Mansa Musa returns back to Mali when he is done. However, we're going to see Ibn Battuta continues to travel out through the rest of the world and learn more about the world, spread his teachings and his knowledge of the religion of Islam as he goes. So both of these guys have some similarities and some differences too.
He set off on horseback for the great learning centers of his time, Alexandria, Cairo, Damascus, and Mecca. In Alexandria, Egypt, he met a mystic who made a startling prediction. Battuta would travel to even more distant lands, Persia, India, and China, where he would meet and study with great religious thinkers and leaders. These words stirred Battuta's imagination. He signed up to become a traveling judge in a caravan heading for Cairo, Egypt. There, he increased his impressive knowledge of Islamic law and continued on to the Horn of Africa and back, settling local disputes and building his reputation along the way. He made his first pilgrimage to Mecca at the age of 27. For Muslims, this pilgrimage, called a Hajj to the most sacred city of Islam, is one of the essential 5 pillars of religious life. Battuta would perform this sacred duty 4 times during his 30-year rihla, or journey. Everywhere he went, Battuta recorded his experiences and observations. He encountered danger and adventure along the way, attacked by thieves, nearly drowned in a sinking ship, and almost put to death by an angry ruler. In all, he covered about 75,000 miles from Mecca to Persia, now modern-day Iran, to present-day North and West Africa, Pakistan, India, the Maldives, Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia, and China, almost all under the governments of Muslim leaders. Battuta was enlisted as an ambassador by princes and kings many times, conveying important messages of greetings and policy throughout the lands. He fulfilled the vision of the mystic in Alexandria, visiting all the places and people he had been predicted. Battuta finally ended his lifelong journey back in Tangier, nearly 30 years after he started out, and dictated accounts of his journeys to Ben Juzay, a scholar and poet. These are known as the famous travels, or Rihla, of Ibn Battuta. His accounts contributed greatly to knowledge about the Islamic world then and now. He died in 1369, the only known medieval traveler to have visited the lands of every Muslim ruler of his time.
Okay, so let's go over some of these questions. But before we do, I just want to point out that Ibn Battuta, who traveled across all of these different lands of the Muslim world, if you were paying attention to some of the dates and how old he was when he started these things, it's really fascinating to see how much time during his life he actually spent away from home, traveling to these places. So if you look here, he was alive from 1304 to 1369. If you do the math, that means he is 35 years old when he passes away. And he is out on his journeys for about, 35 years old, sorry. He is 65 years old when he passes away. But he is out on his journeys for just about 30 years. Folks, this is why I'm a social studies teacher. I do not do mental math very easily and quickly in my head. But if he's 65 and he's out on his journeys for about 30 years, that means he's spending half of his life away from home, traveling and exploring the world and spreading knowledge of Islam, and also experiencing other cultures and other nations as well. Imagine being away from home for that long. It's very interesting and very courageous of this guy to do that. All right, so let's go over to our slides. I'll answer the first set of questions with you here. So from the video and from the reading, the first thing we want to understand is, where was Ibn Battuta from? He was from the city of Tangier, which is in modern-day Morocco. And anybody from this city, which you'll see in the other documentary I'm going to have you guys watch, they call people from this city Tangerines, based on the name of the city, Tangier, which is fascinating to me and actually is going to cause me to Google something as soon as I'm done with this screencast. Because a tangerine is not only somebody from the city of Tangier, but think about where else have you heard that word. We eat oranges that are sometimes called tangerines, and I'm wondering, is there any connection between why we call tangerine oranges that name and the people from that city? I wonder if maybe that type of orange was cultivated or started in that city. I'd be interested to check that out. So you do the same if you are wondering the same, but I'm going to check that out and give it a Google afterwards. So he is from Tangier, modern-day Morocco, in northwest Africa. And why do we know about his travels? Well, he wrote them down. He put them into a travel guide or secondary journal, and it was called the Rihla. But remember, he's not writing these things down day by day as he goes. He's having them written down and scribed by somebody else as he's telling the story, as he's dictating his experiences to the best of his recollection. So this kind of gives us a little bit of a lesson. If we want to document our vacations or our experiences when we travel accurately, we should do so by recording those things as they happen. Now, luckily for us today, we have technology to help us do that. We can, obviously write stuff down in a regular diary or journal on paper, the day after we go to all these places or experience what we do. But thankfully, in a way, we have things like cameras on our phone and Instagram and Facebook, where you can take a picture of something that you just did or experienced. You can add a little caption or description to it, and post it to the internet, save it on your phone, and kind of have a little electronic journal right there by itself. So that's a great advantage that we have in today's world with our technology. Back in the past, they had to do things a little bit slower and a little more deliberately. Question 3, why was Islam important to his travels? Well, most of the places he went to were Muslim nations, and Ibn spoke Arabic, which was the language of the Islamic world. But he was also very knowledgeable in Islamic law. So as he's traveling to all these Muslim nations, he's being welcomed as a teacher, as someone who will be able to help spread the religion and teach Muslims that are not able to travel to centers of Islamic learning like Timbuktu, Damascus, or Mecca, or Baghdad. So he's bringing the religion to them, and they welcome him for that. They host him. Question 4, why did Ibn Battuta start his journey? This is one of the similarities between him and Mansa Musa. He started because he wanted to learn more about the religion, but also take his Islamic knowledge on the road. And while he's traveling, he figures, I want to make the pilgrimage to Mecca, the holiest place of the Islamic world, where he can, experience the, traditions and ceremonies that go along with that Hajj in Mecca, where Muhammad spent a lot of his life, as well as, meeting other Muslims from around the world. And he wants to continue learning and spreading the religion of Islam while on this pilgrimage. For the 5th question here, this one you have to answer based on the. Actually, this is a little bit of a typo. I have the first video here. We watched the first video. I put this in the wrong sequence on the writing, but this is based on the scene from The Man Who Walked Across the World. So after you watch these particular scenes, as I have noted right here and in the packet, there's a scene where there's a photograph that the host of this documentary notices. And the photograph is in a hotel in Tangier, where Ibn Battuta was from. And there's a little bit of a conversation that the host has with the hotel manager about this photograph that is apparently of Ibn Battuta. So based on that scene and that conversation that they have, I want you to answer this question. Is that photograph a reliable source of evidence for information about Ibn Battuta? And why or why not? Pay attention to the host, and he'll give you a little bit of a clue as to why he thinks it is maybe reliable, somewhat reliable, or not reliable. So I want you to choose amongst these 3 and consider these tips from that scene. What type of source did they say it was? And is Ibn's activity in the photo, something he's doing in the photo, historically accurate? And the host will kind of discuss this for you. So as long as you watch that documentary scenes, you'll be able to answer this question, no problem. All right, and on our last page, I just want to brief you on what I want you to do for these map questions. Most of this packet page is a very large map of all the different routes of Ibn Battuta's travels. So study the map, look at how everything is labeled, and answer these basic geography map questions, identifying 3 continents where Ibn Battuta traveled, 3 bodies of water on which he traveled, be careful, and what religion was practiced in most of the places where Ibn Battuta traveled. Look at the names of the places, as well as what we learned about from our reading and from the video. And also, what religion was practiced in most of Europe at the time? Middle Ages, feudal Europe, from our last unit. And then the last question asks you to go beyond the map and consider reasons. Why do you think Ibn Battuta traveled east from Morocco, along this red line here, to the Middle East and Asia? So basically going across North Africa instead of traveling up north through Europe and then over to the Middle East. And it has to do with questions 3 and 4 and a little bit of his background and what he was trying to accomplish. So consider as you respond to that on your own, what religion was prominent in Europe? How did Europeans view Muslims at the time? What other big events have we learned about between Europeans and Muslims that might have caused the conflict if you were to go up there? And 2, remember his purpose for traveling from the previous page. what places offered opportunities to do what he wanted to do when he set out on his travels. And one thing I want to point out on these questions where I give you an option to respond in different ways, make sure that if you are using the answer key slides that I post as you go through our screencast and fill in things and answer your questions, please be careful. Do not just copy and paste blindly from these responses that I put into in here into your packet. Pay attention to some of these questions where you have to answer on your own. Some people's packets, I see exactly this as your response to these questions. Those are not an answer. Those are just my guidelines to help you think about a response of your own to those questions. So just be careful if you're using those answer key slides to catch up on older work. Okay, so that page there finishes off our packet. I want to make sure that you guys are not turning in this in right now. Wait until we have our practice quiz or test to finish off this unit, and then make sure that you're submitting this packet after that, and that will be early next week. So remember that in 2 days, I want you to check back. And on Friday, I will have a screencast to go through one example of these enduring issues documents that we're going to spend some time practicing on before we have our quiz to finish off our unit and wash our hands and be done of this topic. All right, folks, so have a great day. Get some time to go outside if you like. It's supposed to be a little warmer and sunnier than it's been. I hope you guys have a great couple of days. I look forward to seeing you back here on Friday. And email me with any questions. Don't forget to be catching up on any work that you are behind on, and check for those interim reports that come out on Aspen on Friday. All right, have a great day. See you on Friday.